You were not meant to be a slave to the grind. You were not meant to trade your life force for money. You can escape gravity. You can unlock your life. You got this. Let's go.
Hello and welcome to Unlock Your Life. I'm your host, Jennings Smith. This show is all about unlocking who you were meant to be, fulfilling your potential, not living a life of quiet desperation, but taking risks, getting your courage up, and going after the things that you truly want. Today, we're going to be talking about something that is extremely important, and I wish I had known this in my 20s and even 30s. Right? I feel like I really started making a lot of progress about 4 years ago in the mindset game and where I was going. And in the last 3 years, been able to achieve quite a bit. And I attribute that to what I'm going to talk about today. But what do I wish that I had known? What do I wish that I had done a little bit differently? One, I was afraid to take risks. I was afraid to take risks. And you may look at my life and say, well, no, you weren't. You were starting your own business. You were building houses. You were doing all this stuff. And yet I really wasn't taking a lot of risks in regards to money or in regards to relationships. So what do I mean by that? Well, I had a construction company and I was doing the same thing over and over and over again. Renovations, people pay me up front, as little staff as I could handle, pay them as little as I could, work with the cheapest subs, always driving at that bottom dollar because I was afraid to change. That was what I was comfortable with. Now in construction, if you want to level up, do better work, get the better jobs, build the nicer, finer homes, you have to level up your sub base. You have to level up your employees, your project managers. You have to do things differently. You can't just hire the $10 an hour guy and the hardwood flooring guy that's going to do it on the cheap. And I had PTSD from 2008. I graduated Clemson in 2006. I started my own company and was building houses and renovations. And when the bottom fell out, I was in trouble. I had a rental home I was living in. I had sold my other home. I had bought a new home that needed a bunch of renovations, like $150,000 worth of renovations. So I'm paying a mortgage on that. The renovations are going over budget. I'm also paying a rent. I'm also in debt because I had put a bunch on my credit card to try and bankroll this renovation, and I didn't have enough money. And then on top of that, I had done well the year prior and I owed the IRS $15,000 or $18,000 and I hadn't saved for that. So that was a very difficult time for me, put a lot of stress and pressure on me, and it gave me PTSD in a way that I never wanted to be in that scenario again. And so it kind of made me very cautious. And I also had some beliefs that were ingrained in me from a child. You know, my parents did not have much money. You know, we never had a whole lot. We always bought secondhand stuff. We very rarely went out to eat. We lived a fine life, but there was not much extra money to go around. And it was always praised to be finding the deals, right? And don't spend too much money and always do the stuff on the cheap if you can. And I think there's definitely a place for financial responsibility. And I'm grateful for my parents for teaching me that. But there is also a component of it where you're just too risk averse, right? You don't want to spend the money on investing in the better tool, the better sub, the better company, the better quality, the better employee, the third employee, the fourth employee, because of that PTSD of what if things go wrong. So when I'm looking back at this, I will give myself credit because when a franchise approached me with a risk, which was to change everything, align myself with them, and do things massively differently because they were more of a luxury brand builder, and to change my sub base and to change the way that I hired project managers and dealt with them. And it made things much, much better. And I was willing to take those relationship risks and that money risk, right? I had to give them $50,000 as a franchise fee up front. I had to pay royalties. Like, it was definitely a risk. And you may be looking at yourself and thinking, well, I'm willing to take risks with money. Maybe I have a few rental homes or I've got some money in a 401k. And yet, is it only things that you're super comfortable with? So I think about, I'm trying to scale some Facebook ads, right? And I got marketed to by a guy, his name was Frank Kern, on how to do Facebook ads better. And it was a cool little $300 mini course to do it. And I signed up for the free thing. I watched the video. I texted my cousin and partner, Yaden. Was like, hey, do you want to do this? He was like, yeah, seems like a good idea. But I didn't buy it, right? I didn't pull the trigger. I didn't pull my credit card out. I didn't enter the digits, and I didn't buy it for whatever reason. I don't know why I didn't. Just didn't. I knew I needed it. Yaden said it was fine. We were even going to be buying it with the company card. Like, it wasn't coming directly out of my pocket. And yet that old little voice in my head, like, you don't need that. You can figure this out yourself. He probably doesn't know anything that you don't know, blah, 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 which is ridiculous. This guy has dedicated his life to selling online, and yet I wasn't doing it. So long story short, in the next day or two, I was over with Yaden and he bought it, where we bought it together, but he pretty much bought it. He's gone through it and it's been very, very helpful. And I think we're going to get a lot out of it. But the point is, that's money risk, right? That's risk aversion. That's the old me creeping back into my life where it's $300. It's not going to affect my life. It's not going to affect anything really. And yet the scarcity mindset of, I don't want to take that risk. I don't want to feel foolish. I don't have money to just throw away, right? I go back to hiring my executive assistant and how long I delayed on that because I was nervous if it was going to work. And part of it was the money. Part of it was I was worried about hiring her and it not working out and destroying her life and et cetera, which is patently false. And I kind of worked my way through that. But part of it was also the money, right? It's like, okay, it's going to cost X thousands of dollars a month to have this person on my payroll and invest in that relationship. And I didn't want to do it, right? I was cheap. I was like, I can do this stuff myself. I can handle it. It's not that much. Like I've been doing it without her. Why don't I just keep on going and make it work? And I did for a long time, but eventually I saw this is the right thing to do. I've got to do it. I've got to pull the trigger on this. If I do, it's going to reap massive rewards down the road. And I did. And that relationship has been a massive blessing, huge blessing in my life, because it's just all these little ideas that you have as an entrepreneur, things you want to implement, things you want to do differently, stuff you want to update, tweak, change. It's really awesome to have somebody to bounce ideas off of and to help me implement that stuff and push it down to my team and just be a buffer, right? And I'll tell you right now, that's this social media. If you follow me on social media, I've been pushing out a lot of little clips and content that are about 1 minute long. And she found the VAs. She's doing the captions for the VAs. She's correcting their mistakes. She's back and forth. She's hiring them. She's firing them. She's paying them. She's dealing with all that. And I just never would have done it, right? I would have thought, I need to do that. That's a good idea. I maybe would have even made a little bit of content, right? Recorded a few videos. I would have found somebody in the Philippines, a VA, and emailed them something. Maybe, probably not, but maybe. And then when that person flaked out or they sent me something back and it wasn't really that good, I know myself and I would have quit right there. I would have been like, whatever. I'm too busy. I got other stuff to do. This stuff isn't that important. I got to find the next deal. I got to stabilize the next deal. I got to collect the money. I got to run the next deal sprint. I got to do what I got to do. Not that. That's not critical. And yet it is critical, right? Building the brand and building the following and building the relationships with more people is critical. The most important thing I'm probably doing. And yet that will fall off because I hadn't made that investment into the relationship of somebody that could actually help me, right? Because I was afraid to take a risk. I was afraid to take a risk in the relationship, and I was afraid to take a risk with the money. Okay? So let me talk to you about when I started to change. When I joined that franchise, there were some high-level people in there that started mentoring me. Shout out to Dave Young. Appreciate you, man. And I started to change my thoughts on some things. And I go to a conference, and the conference is $5,000. You may have heard this story, but I go to the conference, and this is not about the conference. This is about, at the end of the conference, they talked about this thing called a mastermind, which is $25,000 a year. And it was a group of high-level entrepreneurs, and you were going to get into this mentoring circle, and it was going to be great. And they had a little dinner about it. And I attended the dinner because I wanted to be open to the opportunity. I was trying to be open, but man, when I heard it, to be honest with you guys, I was just like, red alert, alarms going off. Like, who in their right mind would do this? This is insane. This is absolutely insane. $25,000 a year to hang out with like 15 people or whatever it was. Like, no, absolutely no. Not just maybe no, absolutely no. I would never do that. And I don't understand why anyone would. And that was my reaction. So fast forward, so I didn't do it. And yet, even at this conference that I paid the money to go to, I made a relationship there that changed my life. I met my loan sponsor. He raised the capital for our first deal. He mentored me. He helped me get the confidence to get all this stuff across the line. He was a lawyer. You know, he was connected to multi-millionaires. Like, it was a phenomenal relationship that got forged at that conference because I paid to be in the room and was there. Right? So I don't know why I was so like thinking, well, that's a scam over there. That's stupid. That would never work. But I was. And I think we have to grow into that, right? We're all on our own journey. But you fast forward, I think, another year or so, and I've closed a few hundred units. I've made a lot of progress. I have more opportunity at my disposal. And I had a little bit more money, honestly, at my disposal. And another group approached me, or another guy, Mark Evans. You may know him. He approached me to be in his $50,000 a year mastermind, the DM family. And I had already thought about that. I had already thought, if this guy ever asks me to be in his group, I'm going to take it because I like him and I like the way he thinks. And I resonated with his message. And so I did commit to that. And I committed right then. I wasn't like, oh, let me think about it, or let me talk to my wife, or I think I did actually try to say, let me talk to my wife. And he said, well, she already knows you're crazy. You might as well prove it to her. And he was right. Because I knew that talking to her about it, it really wasn't the reason why I was or wasn't making the decision. It was just a stall tactic. So I made the commitment right then and joined that group and started to heavily invest in relationships. And that group has evolved into, that's the reason I started my first million in multifamily. That's the reason why I started an email list, why I started the deal room. That's the reason why I have a assistant. That's the reason why I am looking into purchasing a business and doing more things and building more on my life. I mean, the guy that runs this podcast is in the family, the DM family, and that's why I'm doing that. So those relationships compounded and expanded from that group because I was willing to invest and take the relationship risk and take the money risk. So yes, though, you have to meet people where they are, right? I have my Facebook group. It's 23,000 people in there. It's free. And there are people that's all that they can afford to commit to it, right? They can't commit any money to it. They can commit very little time to it. And so they're in the free group. They're lurking around and their results are very limited, right? Their results are limited because their resources are limited. Their time is limited. And they're probably not all that committed to really closing multifamily deals versus the deal room, which is $350 a month. The people in there is a different caliber. There's only 300 people in that group, right? There's 26,000 or 23,000 in the other group. There's 300 people in this group, 1%. And yet they're the ones that are closing the deals. They're the ones that are getting things done because they're investing the money and they're investing in the relationships there. And getting into that room is so much different than being in a Facebook group with 20-something thousand people in it. Everybody in that room knows each other. They're connecting with each other. They're raising capital for each other. They're partnering with each other on deals. They're connecting with my network in there and loan sponsors. My network knows that they're a little bit vetted and they're qualified and they're working towards this because they're in that group versus in the large group. And so getting in these exclusive groups is definitely, it's something, guys. I mean, there's a reason why there's country clubs out there. There's a reason why there are groups that it takes a barrier of entry to enter that group, right? Because they're not for everybody. They're for people that have opportunity at their disposal, that are willing to invest in themselves, commit the capital, commit the money, and they're willing to commit to new relationships and forging and building new relationships. So let me get into relationships and then we'll wrap it up. Relationships are the absolute key. And this is what I wish that I had known, that I'd taken more risks with my money when I was younger, as far as investing in myself. But I really wish I had taken more relationship risk earlier. So this may surprise you, may not, but I am somewhat introverted person. And I had some trepidations about building the Facebook group, putting myself out there, taking on more and more people into my life who would be, I saw this as they would be wanting something from me. And that was wrong thinking, but that's what it was. That's where I was in my journey at the time. And I didn't want that. But every dollar that you have, every dollar that I have in my bank account is from a relationship, right? Every opportunity I've ever come across is from a relationship. And when I looked into that, it's like, why am I resisting this? Why am I resisting relationships? And when I started, I just built a multifamily course, right? Very limited relationship. It was just a course, video course. You watch it, you pay me. That's it. There's no mentoring. There's no interactions. That's it. It's just a course, right? That's where I was. And yet I saw that the course wasn't that helpful, right? People needed the building block of how to do it, but there was a large demographic that wanted more. They wanted weekly accountability calls. They wanted me to help them live underwrite their deals. They wanted Q&A sessions and deal sprints, and they wanted to come to live events and hang out and network with other high-level operators and multimillionaires. Like, they wanted that. They needed that, and that was going to push them along. And when I committed to that, I got a lot more opportunity. And frankly, we made a lot more money. Relationships equal money. Relationships equal opportunity. And more than anything, and I'm going to end with this point, relationships equal fulfillment. Relationships equal love. Relationships equal purpose. Because what is all this worth? So you have another zero in your bank account. So you do one more deal. That stuff, it definitely matters and it makes life fun. But more than that is when you get an email from somebody and they say, you changed my life. Something you said, something you shared, an opportunity that you presented to me, somebody that you connected me with, somebody that you introduced me to, somebody that invested with me or you invested with them. That's the thing that changed my life. That was the catalyst. That was the linchpin. That was the turning point. Where somebody's talking about you like I was talking about the guy I met at the conference, my loan sponsor that changed everything. Like I'm talking about Mark Evans, who mentored me and brought me along and changed a lot of things about the way that I view everything, right? And that is cool, right? To help other people, to build that purpose of I'm here to be a giver. I'm here to build relationships with people on earth. I'm here to give as much as I possibly can, because we all know that if you give enough away, you help enough people get what they want, you can have anything that you want too. So I'm going to leave it at that, guys. I appreciate you tuning in this week. And next week, we've got a phenomenal show coming up. If you're enjoying the show, appreciate it if you leave me a review. Jump on Apple or Stitcher or Google or wherever you're listening to this. Hit me up. I look at those reviews. I read them. If you want to connect with me on Instagram or Facebook, I'm happy to continue a relationship there and have a conversation. So don't be afraid to hit me up. Shoot me a message. I appreciate you. And don't forget to unlock your life. Peace.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.